Imagine this. A man wakes up at 5 a.m., meditates for 20 minutes, journals 3 pages of gratitude, exercises for an hour, takes a cold shower, reads a self-improvement book while drinking his bulletproof coffee, and still feels empty inside. He has followed every guru's advice, downloaded every productivity app, attended every seminar, yet something gnaws at him, a void that grows deeper with each affirmation he repeats in the mirror. This is the modern tragedy playing out in millions of lives across the world. People drowning in a sea of self-optimization, desperately swimming toward a shore that keeps moving further away. They've become professional improvers, career optimizers, perpetual students of their own inadequacy. But here's the unsettling question. What if the cure has become the disease? Look around you. Self-help has become a $13 billion industry, promising transformation, enlightenment, and success. Yet depression rates soar. Anxiety cripples entire generations. People feel more lost than ever before. How can this be? How can an industry dedicated to human flourishing coincide with unprecedented levels of human suffering? Consider Sarah, who spent $30,000 on coaching programs last year. She can recite Tony Robbins verbatim, knows her Myers-Briggs type, her Enneagram number, her attachment style. She's done ayahuasca ceremonies, silent retreats, and breathwork sessions. Yet she lies awake at night, haunted by a simple question. Why do I still hate myself? Or take Marcus, who has read 200 self-help books in the past 3 years. His apartment looks like a motivational poster exploded. Vision boards covering every wall, affirmations stuck to his bathroom mirror, success quotes programmed to pop up on his phone every hour. He wakes up feeling like a failure because he only managed 6 of his 7 morning rituals. The very tools meant to liberate him have become chains. This is the dark secret lurking beneath the glossy surface of personal development. It has created a generation of people addicted to the idea of their future selves, while being violently disconnected from who they are right now. They've become ghosts, haunting their own lives, always preparing for a tomorrow that never arrives. But why? Why has self-help, this supposedly noble pursuit of human potential, become a factory of neurosis? Why do people emerge from years of inner work more fragmented than when they began? What transforms a journey of growth into an endless treadmill of inadequacy? The answer lies not in what self-help teaches, but in what it conceals. Behind every promise of transformation lurks an unspoken message. You are not enough as you are. Behind every technique for happiness hides an indictment. Your natural state is flawed. Behind every success story whispers a threat. Without constant improvement, you are worthless. This is the paradox that breaks people's minds. The more they try to fix themselves, the more broken they feel. The harder they work on becoming, the further they drift from being. The more strategies they accumulate for living, the less alive they become. Think about it. When did working on yourself become a full-time job? When did existing require a manual? When did being human become a problem to be solved, rather than an experience to be lived? We've entered an era where people know more about optimization than observation, more about goals than presence, more about becoming than being. They've memorized the map but forgotten how to walk. They've collected every compass but lost their inner direction. They chase metrics of success while the actual experience of life slips through their fingers like sand. What would happen if we pulled back the curtain on this industry? What would we find hiding behind the motivational speeches and breakthrough promises? What dark psychology drives millions to seek endless improvement while running from the one thing that could actually save them? Acceptance of what is. These questions matter because we're not just talking about wasted money or time. We're talking about wasted lives. People spending decades in pursuit of a better version of themselves, only to realize they've been running on a treadmill, sweating and straining but never moving forward. They've been so busy becoming that they've forgotten how to be. The tragedy deepens when you realize that self-help hasn't just failed to solve our problems, it has become the problem. It has created a new form of suffering, a modern neurosis where people are simultaneously their own project manager, their own harsh critic, and their own impossible standard. They've internalized a corporate model of existence where they must constantly upgrade, optimize, and increase their personal ROI. But what if there's another way? What if the very foundations of self-help culture rest on a lie so fundamental that exposing it would bring the entire edifice crashing down? What if the path to genuine transformation requires not adding more techniques, but subtracting the very mindset that drove us to seek help in the first place? The self-help industry's greatest deception isn't what it sells, it's what it assumes. At its core lies a poisonous premise that Carl Jung would have immediately recognized as shadow projection. The belief that your authentic self is fundamentally deficient. This isn't merely wrong, it's psychologically catastrophic. Jung understood that wholeness comes not from eliminating our darkness, but from integrating it. Yet self-help culture operates on the opposite principle. It treats human nature like a software bug to be patched. Every technique, every program, every guru's teaching carries the same hidden virus. You must become someone else to be worthy of existence. This is where Nietzsche's prophecy becomes terrifyingly relevant. He warned that after the death of God, humanity would seek new idols to worship. We've found them in the altar of self-optimization. The modern person doesn't kneel before crosses. They kneel before vision boards. They don't seek salvation in heaven. They seek it in the next productivity hack, the next morning routine, the next transformational seminar. But Nietzsche saw deeper. He understood that this compulsive self-improvement stems from what he called resentment, a deep-seated resentment against life itself. The person constantly trying to improve secretly hates what they are. They've internalized a slave morality that says suffering is wrong, discomfort is failure, and negative emotions are sins against the God of positivity. Schopenhauer would laugh darkly at our predicament. He knew that life is suffering, that desire creates pain, and that the will drives us endlessly forward. But while he advocated for understanding and transcending this cycle, self-help culture does the opposite. It amplifies the will, multiplies desires, and promises that with enough effort, you can escape the human condition itself. Consider how this manifests psychologically. The person trapped in self-help culture develops what we might call improvement psychosis, a state where they can no longer experience reality without the filter of optimization. They can't eat a meal without calculating macros. They can't have a conversation without networking. They can't feel sad without immediately reaching for a technique to process the emotion. They've become machines running self-help software, no longer capable of raw, unmediated experience. This is what Sartre meant by bad faith, living inauthentically by denying your fundamental freedom and responsibility. The self-help addict exists in perpetual bad faith, always deferring their life to a future moment when they'll finally be ready. They say, "I'll be happy when I'm confident. I'll date when I've healed my trauma. I'll pursue my dreams when I've optimized my productivity." Always when, never now. But here's where it gets truly insidious. The self-help industry has co-opted the language of genuine psychological growth and twisted it into its opposite. They speak of shadow work while teaching people to exile their shadows. They preach self-love while implying you must earn it through constant improvement. They promise authenticity while teaching you to perform a better version of yourself. Viktor Frankl, who found meaning in the concentration camps, would be horrified by what we've done to his insights. He discovered that meaning comes from how we respond to unavoidable suffering, not from eliminating suffering altogether. Yet self-help culture has perverted this into a toxic positivity that says all suffering is optional, all pain is a choice, and if you're not happy, you're simply not trying hard enough. This creates what psychologists now recognize as spiritual bypassing, using spiritual or psychological concepts to avoid dealing with painful emotions or unresolved issues. The person becomes addicted to the high of potential transformation while never actually transforming. They collect insights like trophies while their core wounds fester untouched. The philosophical roots run deeper still. Aldous Huxley predicted our situation with chilling accuracy. In Brave New World, he showed how control could be maintained not through oppression, but through pleasure, distraction, and the illusion of choice. Self-help culture is our soma, the drug that makes us feel we're growing while keeping us trapped in place. We've created a culture where the natural human experience, with its ups and downs, its light and shadow, its periods of growth and stagnation, is seen as a problem to be fixed. We've pathologized normalcy. Feeling content is called complacency. Accepting yourself is labeled settling. Not constantly striving is seen as giving up. The result? A society of psychological hypochondriacs, always scanning for what's wrong, always finding new areas to improve, never able to rest in simple being. They've internalized a capitalist model of the self where they must show quarterly growth, increase their emotional ROI, and maximize their potential profit. But potential is a tyrant. It whispers constantly about who you could be while making you despise who you are. It turns life into an endless performance review where you're always falling short of projections. It makes the present moment nothing more than raw material for a better future. This is the shadow side of our culture's obsession with progress. We've forgotten that a human being is not a project to be completed, but a mystery to be lived. We've lost touch with what the ancient philosophers knew, that wisdom comes not from adding, but from subtracting, not from becoming, but from uncovering what was always there. The self-help industry thrives on maintaining this ignorance. It needs you to believe you're broken so it can sell you fixes. It needs you to feel inadequate so it can offer solutions. It needs you to stay on the hamster wheel so it can keep selling you faster wheels. The damage unfolds like a silent epidemic. Walk into any coffee shop, any office, any gathering of young professionals, and you'll witness the casualties. They speak in self-help jargon, their natural language replaced by a corporate dialect of growth mindsets and limiting beliefs. They've become walking LinkedIn profiles, human beings reduced to personal brands, authentic connection replaced by strategic networking. But the real consequences run deeper than vocabulary. Neuroscience reveals a disturbing truth. The constant self-monitoring promoted by self-help culture literally rewires the brain. The default mode network, responsible for sense of self and introspection, becomes hyperactive. People develop what researchers call chronic self-focus, a state where they can't stop analyzing their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They become prisoners in the panopticon of their own consciousness. This creates a paradox that would fascinate any psychologist. The more people focus on happiness, the more it eludes them. Studies show that those who constantly monitor their happiness levels report lower life satisfaction. It's like trying to fall asleep by concentrating harder. The very effort prevents the outcome. Self-help culture has turned millions into psychological insomniacs, wide awake to their every flaw, unable to rest in simple being. Consider the phenomenon of therapy speak infiltrating everyday relationships. People no longer have disagreements. They have boundary violations. They don't feel hurt. They experience trauma responses. They don't dislike someone. That person is toxic or narcissistic. This hypervigilant labeling creates a sterile emotional landscape where every human interaction becomes a potential pathology to diagnose and treat. The consequences ripple outward. Relationships crumble under the weight of constant analysis. One partner reads attachment theory books while the other studies love languages, both so busy optimizing their connection that they forget to actually connect. They've become technicians of intimacy rather than participants in it. They know all the theory, but have lost the ability to simply be present with another human being. In the workplace, self-help culture has created a new form of exploitation. Companies now expect employees not just to work, but to find their passion, to be engaged, to bring their whole selves to work. The boundary between personal and professional dissolves. Your job isn't just what you do, it's who you are. Burnout becomes a personal failing rather than a systemic issue. If you're exhausted, you just need better energy management. This colonization of the inner life extends to social media, where self-help culture reaches its grotesque apotheosis. Instagram becomes a gallery of optimization performances, morning routines, workout videos, gratitude posts. Everyone curating their growth journey for public consumption. The pressure to not just improve, but to document improvement creates a double imprisonment. You must constantly evolve and constantly prove you're evolving. The mental health implications are staggering. Therapists report a new kind of patient, articulate about their issues, fluent in psychological terminology, yet somehow more stuck than ever. They've intellectualized their problems without resolving them. They can explain their trauma in perfect detail, but can't feel their way through it. They've become scholars of their own suffering, writing dissertations on their pain while remaining unable to heal. Even more insidious is how self-help culture has corrupted our relationship with time. Every moment becomes an opportunity for growth. Every experience raw material for self-improvement. People can't watch a sunset without thinking about mindfulness. They can't enjoy a meal without considering its nutritional optimization. They can't have a lazy Sunday without feeling guilty about wasted potential. Life becomes a constant performance evaluation. The spiritual consequences are perhaps the darkest. Traditional wisdom teaches that ego dissolution leads to liberation. But self-help culture has created the opposite. Ego inflation disguised as growth. People become more self-obsessed, not less. They mistake navel-gazing for inner work, self-absorption for self-awareness. They've become spiritual narcissists, using enlightenment as another way to feel superior. This has created a generation that philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the tired self, exhausted not from external oppression, but from internal optimization. They're burned out, not from working in factories, but from working on themselves. They've become both the laborer and the taskmaster, the product and the quality control, trapped in an endless cycle of self-exploitation. The cultural consequences extend beyond individuals. We've lost the ability to accept tragedy, to sit with discomfort, to acknowledge that some things can't be fixed. Every societal problem gets reduced to individual solutions. Depressed? Work on your mindset. Poor? Manifest abundance. Oppressed? Change your victim mentality. This individualization of systemic issues serves power structures perfectly. Why change society when you can just change yourself? The ultimate consequence is existential. People have forgotten how to be human. They've lost touch with the messiness, the contradictions, the beautiful imperfection of existence. They've traded the full spectrum of human experience for a narrow band of acceptable emotions and approved thoughts. They've become caricatures of wellness, hollow versions of optimization, ghosts haunting their own lives. Watch them closely, these optimized souls. Notice the tension in their perfectly postured bodies, the strain behind their gratitude practices, the exhaustion their morning routines can't cure. They're running software that's incompatible with their hardware, trying to be machines when they're magnificently, irreducibly human. The tragedy is that in trying to transcend the human condition, they've simply created new forms of suffering. In attempting to escape pain, they've invented deeper kinds of anguish. In seeking control, they've become more powerless than ever. They've proven Schopenhauer right. The will turns even liberation into another form of bondage. The path to freedom begins with a radical act, throwing away your self-help books. Not reading them differently, not finding better ones, literally removing them from your life. This isn't anti-intellectual. It's recognizing that you cannot think your way out of a problem created by overthinking. You cannot optimize your way out of optimization addiction. You must starve the beast. But this is just the first step in what Jung would call a genuine individuation. Not becoming who you think you should be, but uncovering who you already are beneath the layers of improvement propaganda. This requires a complete inversion of everything self-help culture has taught you. Instead of adding practices, subtract them. Instead of morning routines, wake up without a plan. Instead of journaling prompts, stare at a blank page. Instead of meditation apps, sit in silence without instruction. Feel the discomfort of not having a system. Let the anxiety of unstructured time wash over you. This isn't laziness. It's rehabilitation from the addiction to productivity. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of thrownness, the idea that we're thrown into existence without a manual, forced to create meaning from nothing. Self-help culture promises to give you that manual, but the manual is the problem. Real freedom comes from accepting the fundamental groundlessness of existence and building your life from that acceptance. Consider the practice of what we might call aggressive ordinariness. While everyone else wakes at 5 a.m. for their routines, sleep until your body naturally wakes. While they optimize their nutrition, eat what genuinely satisfies you. While they network strategically, have conversations with no agenda, become militantly average, violently present, rebelliously human. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up on growth. It's about recognizing that real growth happens in the spaces between effort, in the moments when you stop trying to become and simply are. Nature doesn't try to grow, it grows. Children don't optimize their play, they play. You don't need a technique to be alive, you need to remove the techniques that are killing your aliveness. The artist doesn't create by following a creativity manual. The lover doesn't connect through relationship hacks. The philosopher doesn't think by applying thinking frameworks. They engage directly with reality, unmediated by methods and systems. This direct engagement is what self-help culture has stolen from you, and what you must reclaim. Start with what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. Not the fake positivity of everything happens for a reason, but the fierce acceptance of what is. Your depression isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. Your anxiety isn't a bug to fix, but a feature of consciousness. Your flaws aren't obstacles to happiness, but integral parts of your humanity. This requires developing what I call sacred stubbornness, a refusal to be improved. When someone suggests a new technique, decline. When you feel the pull to optimize, resist. When the voice says you're not enough, respond with magnificent indifference. Become impossible to help, immune to intervention, beautifully unreformable. The Stoics understood something self-help culture has forgotten. The only real control is the decision to accept what you cannot control. But they weren't trying to optimize their acceptance or gamify their stoicism. They were simply responding to reality as it is, not as they wished it to be. Practice what might be called purposeful purposelessness. Spend an entire day with no goals. Take walks with no destination. Have conversations with no outcome in mind. Create art with no intention to share it. Discover what happens when you remove the tyranny of purpose from your actions. You might find that life has its own intelligence that emerges when you stop trying to direct it. This is where Sartre's concept of radical freedom becomes essential. You are condemned to be free, responsible for creating meaning in a meaningless universe. But self-help culture has convinced you that meaning comes from following someone else's blueprint. Real freedom is terrifying because it means you can't blame your life on not having the right morning routine or healing modality. You are fully responsible for your existence. The practical rebellion involves specific acts of defiance. Cancel your coaching subscriptions, delete your productivity apps, unfollow every motivational account. Not because these things are inherently evil, but because you need to discover who you are without them. You need to meet yourself without the mediation of constant improvement messaging. Replace consumption with creation, but creation without purpose. Write stream of consciousness pages you'll never read again. Paint abstract expressions of your inner state. Dance alone in your room with no regard for form. Sing off key with full commitment. These acts of purposeless creation reconnect you with the fundamental creative force of existence that needs no optimization. The rebellion culminates in what we might call the great refusal. Saying no to the entire paradigm of self as project. You are not a startup to be scaled. You are not a product to be optimized. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a living process, complete in your incompleteness, perfect in your imperfection, whole in your brokenness. This isn't giving up. It's the most radical form of self-assertion possible. It's declaring that you have the right to exist without justification, to be valuable without achievement, to be loved without improvement. It's the ultimate rebellion against a culture that profits from your feelings of inadequacy. Here is the truth that shatters everything. You were never broken. The entire self-help industrial complex depends on a lie so fundamental that exposing it threatens a multi-billion-dollar industry. You didn't need fixing. You needed presence. You didn't need improvement. You needed acceptance. You didn't need to become someone else. You needed to stop abandoning who you already were. But the revelation goes deeper. The very search for self-improvement was the wound. The cure was the disease. Every moment you spent trying to fix yourself was a moment you spent in exile from your own existence. You were a refugee from your own life, seeking asylum in a future that would never arrive, because the seeking itself pushed it away. Consider the breathtaking cruelty of what happened. An industry convinced you that your natural state was deficient, then sold you solutions that deepened the sense of deficiency. Each book, each seminar, each technique whispered the same poison. Not yet. Not enough. Keep trying. You were trapped in a maze where every exit door led to another corridor of inadequacy. But here's what changes everything. The moment you stop improving is the moment you start living. Not because improvement is bad, but because compulsive improvement is avoidance dressed in productivity clothes. Every optimization was the escape route from the raw experience of being human. Every technique was a buffer against the beautiful terror of existence. The mystics knew this secret. Rumi wrote, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." But self-help culture corrupted this into strategic passion-finding, purpose-discovering, mission statement writing. They turned the mysterious pull of authentic desire into another optimization project. What you really love was never in a workbook. Your purpose was never waiting to be discovered through exercises. Your authentic self wasn't hidden beneath trauma needing excavation. You were always already here, always already whole, always already enough. The search was the only thing preventing the finding. This is the cosmic joke. Enlightenment isn't earned through spiritual practices. Happiness isn't achieved through positive psychology. Success isn't manifested through vision boards. These states arise spontaneously when you stop chasing them, like a cat that only comes when you ignore it. The universe has a sense of humor, and the punchline is that everything you sought was already yours. But accepting this truth requires mourning. You must grieve the years spent in self-imposed exile. You must mourn the life you didn't live while you were busy preparing to live. You must feel the full weight of how the culture betrayed you, how you betrayed yourself, how we all participated in this collective delusion. From this mourning comes a different kind of strength. Not the strength of endless striving, but the strength of deep surrender. Not the power of control, but the power of release. Not the achievement of becoming, but the achievement of being. You discover that vulnerability is the only true strength, that accepting your weakness is the only real power. The ultimate realization is this: life was never a problem to be solved. It was a mystery to be lived. Your pain wasn't a mistake to be corrected. It was a teacher to be honored. Your flaws weren't bugs to be fixed. They were features that made you irreplaceably human. Your darkness wasn't evil to be eliminated. It was the rich soil from which your light grew. Watch what happens when you embody this truth. Relationships deepen because you're actually present instead of constantly improving. Work becomes meaningful because you're engaged with reality instead of optimizing performance. Creativity flows because you're not trying to monetize every impulse. Life becomes vivid because you're living it instead of preparing for it. This isn't a philosophy of stagnation. Real growth still happens, but it happens organically, like a plant growing toward light, not mechanically, like a machine being upgraded. You evolve not because you're forcing evolution, but because evolution is the nature of living things when they're not interfering with themselves. The French philosopher Simone Weil wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." The entire self-help culture is built on distraction, constantly pulling your attention to who you might become instead of who you are. The ultimate rebellion is the simplest thing, paying attention to what is, and what is you. Reading these words, breathing, existing. Not the improved future you, not the wounded past you, but this present you, perfect in your imperfection, complete in your incompleteness, whole in your brokenness. The you that never needed a single self-help book because you were never a problem to be solved. This is the final freedom. You can put down the burden of self-improvement. You can stop the exhausting performance of optimization. You can end the war with yourself. Not because you've won, but because you've realized there was never a war. Only a misunderstanding promoted by those who profit from your sense of inadequacy. The invitation is simple, but not easy. Come home to yourself. Stop the search and let yourself be found. Stop the improvement and let yourself be. Stop trying to earn your existence and accept that you belong here simply because you exist. This isn't giving up. It's the most radical act of self-love possible. In the end, the dark side of self-help culture reveals its own cure. By showing us what happens when we treat ourselves as projects, it teaches us the value of accepting ourselves as mysteries. By exhausting us with endless improvement, it prepares us for the relief of simply being. By failing so spectacularly, it succeeds in pushing us toward the only truth that matters. You are already enough. You always were. You always will be. The search is over. Welcome home.